Oana, Jason, thank you so much for sitting down and taking a few minutes. Why don't you start off by introducing yourselves and your role, organization?
So my name is Oana. It's like I want to have a cup of coffee, which is how I'm feeling right now. And I am the founder and practice leader at Firefly. And we are a consulting firm that really is rooted in transformation and values and development, and we specialize in the context of doing equity work.
My name is Jason Rebello. I'm one of the managing partners with Firefly. It's been an incredible 5-year journey helping organizations transform.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's been a great journey thus far, and I go back to our first conversation, Oana, when we first connected. What was it about Connex that was of an interest to you when we first had our conversation?
Yeah, I think, Jason and I have been in this business for close to 20 years, and a big part of this business is just the people that you meet. I call it in the trenches, because sometimes it feels like that type of effort and challenge, and so that's great to a certain point with a consulting practice and the work that we do. And one of the things that we wanted to do was expand beyond our personal relationships. So we got very lucky to do the work that we do with the clients that we've had. And we really wanted to diversify in a way that isn't going to happen organically with our network. And so I think Jason was the one that recommended that we actually connect with you and learn a little bit more. As you can imagine, we get spammed with everybody. Everybody's trying to grow our business for us. And so, it felt like a good fit in the goals that you had and the type of partnership that you were envisioning for us. And
maybe Jason, I'll take it to you then, because we first connected and enjoyed the conversations before you did your travels and vacations. That first connective tissue in our holistic development with Connex is the discovery process. How are we going to position you in the marketplace? Maybe you can talk to that process.
Yeah, I think it's really an important part of the Connex partnership. I think we had a very clear sense of who we are, who we wanted to be, who we wanted to work with, and what our value proposition is and was. But it's always beneficial to kind of be able to talk through it with kind of a third-party objective kind of team, especially one that already has insights into what potential clients might really be looking for. So that process, I think it was actually transformative for us as well to figure out, how do we want to talk about ourselves? What are our key value propositions, especially beyond our core network? Given your insights into who your members are, who the clients potentially are, it really helped us. How do we want to tweak? How do we want to tweak about talk, a refinement of how we want to talk about what we do, specifically to be able to engage a specific type of client. So I think it was really helpful for us to do that. And I feel like it helped us expand our offering in the way that we talk about it, which became critical as the entire industry ended up shifting on us, even since the time that we started working with Connex.
Yeah. The story I tell often is when I started this work, it was right when the neuroscience dovetailed into HR. And so it was like neuroscience and culture, and then from cultural competence, it became DI, and from DI, it turned into equity work and anti-racism. And I think the benefit for us is we've been on this journey the entire time. The work doesn't change, right? And so one of the things that we talk about now is, are you telling me that you don't want to understand your colleagues better, or you don't want to match to the community that you're operating in? And no leader will say, no, I don't want that. Or, and so it's like, let's unpack this conversation around what DI is to what good leadership is. And we talk about this all the time. It's like, you want to unlock trust. You want to unlock being an adaptive leader. Everything that's changed, even COVID, right? How do you see around corners? That is the conversation we have all the time. Don't let the headlines scare you, right? Because it's about human-centered connection and doing that with the work that you do. How do you get better at that? And that becomes, the bigger conversation we're having now, which helped us kind of reframe even in the middle of this, right? With how we're talking about it at Connex. So I think it's harder when you're not in this industry to understand what doesn't resonate with people outside of that, right? Because they're subject matter experts in very different things. I've sat in in rooms with very smart people that run very, very, very big brand companies that are like, just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? It's a multi-billion-dollar business. What?
Yeah. Well, that's like telling a child, just tell me how to grow up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, we got a lot to go from point A to B.
Don't you have like a do and don't list?
No. Well, and getting back to that messaging piece too, what's really difficult is that with the employers and so much on their plate, they tend to categorize, right? So now if you get stuck in a category, you're seen as one of many, right? So how do you then stand out knowing that until you get in front of them, they're just putting you in that lump without having the history and understanding who you are and where those true differentiators are, not the things that all of those colleagues that are in similar space are gonna say. How do you cross that finish line, right? And that's where I guess good transition to the next piece would be, that's where when Connex, when we're going through those discoveries with our members, we give you the insights and the opportunity reports. And, the first meeting that we set up for you wound up being what looked like it was a home run. The home run got taken off the scoreboard and then it got put back on, and that's the world we live in. Maybe you could share that case study.
Yeah, I mean, again, a big part of this work is like our lived experience. So we were really well aligned with your member, and it was a very easy cohesion. I don't know what you would call it. It was very compatible, right? It was very easy to see how we could support their efforts, how we were the right partner. And then they got a new CEO. And so again, we're in the business of transformation, and you know that you transform as you're going through something with an organization, and it took 6 months, longer. And that's the life cycle of this work sometimes, like it could be 3 months, it could be 18 weeks, it could be pick a thing, And, we closed that deal, and it was really due to the fact that you took the time to really prepare them, to prepare us. And I think that's really helpful, and it also makes it really efficient. So then when we're showing up on these calls, we're ready to go. And I think that's the other piece with Jason and I is we are not there to offer the cure. We're there to listen. And we're there to figure out, and we have the power to be honest and say, like, we may not be the right partner for you, or, that's not what we do, or the power to say, no, like, I don't think this is a good, whatever the case may be. And so I think that was really lucky. It's still a lot of hard work, and I think oftentimes it can feel intimidating for some that don't pitch all the time.
Yeah.
To synthesize your message, which I think is probably the toughest part.
Yeah, well, and that's something, I enjoyed working with you on you guys, what you do is really, really special. And, our team acknowledged that after we did the discovery. Boy, you guys are we've done this rodeo over and over and over. You're really special about what you do. But then being in the room is a whole different world, right? So, and that was fun for me to be able to look into you real time and what kind of value can I add to you there, and where do I just keep my hands off? That's part of their partnership, right? Some need a lot, some don't. Maybe you can talk, Jason, I don't know, maybe you can talk to that, just that feedback part, giving you feedback off of those initial.
Yeah, I think that's probably, if point one is being brought in as a vetted, valued partner with, connections to, companies that really need our support is point one. The second most important aspect from my lens around Connex is what happens in between that initial pitch and the close. And normally as a vendor, you just have that one-way communication. Maybe they went dark, maybe they're no longer responding to emails, or maybe life just got crazy for them, which happens all the time. Being able to say, hey, Rob, has anything changed? Having somebody else on the inside that can give us some insight into what is happening. Even that in that first example that you mentioned, being able to have that touch point allowed us to stay engaged with that client a lot longer, right? Because we had a sense of, oh, there's still something here, there's still an opportunity here that we might not have had if we were just kind of engaging with them one-on-one. So having Connex and you as a resource to be able to check in, I think was really, really valuable and really, really important for us.
Yeah, and part of that process is it is ongoing. It's very fluid in doing check-ins, making sure everything is aligned. And I was just having this conversation with one of our members. There's no perfect relationship in any two-way relationship between partners and buyers, and there's always going to be a blip here or there, right? And the magnitude in the off, you don't want them often, and it's how you cure things. And I know at one point things went so well out of the gates, and then it went dry. And Jason, you picked up the phone, and you're like, what's going on, Robert? We're not getting enough opportunity, and as you alluded to, Oana, the space changed. The world changed this year, right? And so what we did is got back on and went through rediscovery to say, okay, what are we missing that we can tangibly grasp relative to your value proposition that will allow us to give you more opportunity? So maybe you can both talk to that.
Yeah, I think we've always prided ourselves on organizational and leadership transformation. Like at our core, That's what we do.
From a functional standpoint.
We do it with the intentional lens of equity, inclusion, diversity, but that these things just have to be baked into great leadership as opposed to a separate entity or a separate dynamic. However, the industry for the longest time has been operating as this kind of DEI siloed thing. And now that it's changed, what leaders and companies are moving away from this siloed kind of dynamic, the question becomes then what? What happens in that space? And I think Oana mentioned this all the time. The need for the work hasn't gone away, hasn't changed. You still want to be able to everybody wants high-performing teams. How do you get a high-performing team? Well, we need to have trust within our organization. Well, how do you know whether or not you have trust in the organization? And at its core, we go in to try and understand what are the barriers to trust within your organization that are impeding you to really be able to perform at the level you want.
Like one of the things that was shared at this conference was this idea of just be straight shooter, tell me what you think. And I'm like, wow, that's very hard for people that don't have the power or the protection to do that. And again,
that's it.
There's nothing wrong with thinking that, but if you don't think about leadership from a place of, I've learned a lot from my family system, from my previous employer, from my mentor, my sponsor, my pick a thing, right? That comes with all of these things that are working for you. How do we scale that? That's the real thing. So, I think what's happening is there's a recalibration in the market for DEI because there's a lot of activism, which I think is, a lot of heart and energy. But I think the benefit that we have is that we have been doing this for a long time. And we know the systems that are required to embed. And the example I always give is we're not the belt, we're not the shoes, we're like the thread of your organization. And if you don't know how to build it in, you're relying on somebody's goodwill or championship or allyship, and that's just not sustainable. And that's not sustainable with a worldwide event like COVID. It's not sustainable with whatever happens after the election, after, the Fed just changed there's so many indicators of change, right? And I think that's part of the conversation that we try to have is DEI is about good leadership. You can call it whatever you want to call it, But if we can't create safe spaces for people to build trust, if you don't know what it takes to build trust, if your enterprise priorities counter your efforts, right? Urgency, emergency, right, is like the core culture for some organizations, regardless of what they have on their website, right? And so those are the conversations that we have. And I think what's powerful is to be able to show that we are like tested and seasoned. We've been in this rodeo a couple times. I mean, it's like, you know, and I think that's the piece that really works for us is we've done some really big, large scale things. And I don't know what the number is, like 17,000 leaders, 43 countries last year alone, right? Like, we've learned some things,
Yep.
you know, and we may not be the answer to all things, and we'll be the first one to tell you too, right? Because we care about impact.
But think about how, I mean, articulating that, now downloading that to us, and that's why that becomes a growth in partnership. So how do we really distill that enough so that we can find the right opportunity for you? It's definitely broader when you look at it through that approach, because the industry is getting away from siloing DE&I and understanding that it should just be a part of everything you're doing transformatively. You know, it should be not just through your soft skills and your unconscious, conscious biases, but it needs to be baked into your processes, or, you know, your technology processes, whether it's ATS, everything. And so that is that's transformation.
It's from shift work differences to home, you know, office versus in the field. I mean, all of that is DI, right? Like it's from like blue collar or technical jobs, non-corporate jobs, non-laptop jobs to, I mean, all of that is part of our conversation, right? But people don't think about that. And I think it's important to say that you have to have offer the grace and the will to say a lot of that is coming from a place of fear, and to be able to have a conversation about that, you know, without the blame and the shame. And I think that's a big piece for us that I think is so, I don't know, so different than what we hear out there, you know, because you're not gonna change anything that way.
Well, listen, you've been both really gracious with your time. Really appreciate both of you. We appreciate your relationship, and thanks for taking a few minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.